Hello, once again I'm Cosmic, and today we're going to be reviewing ICY. Now ICY is an indie post-apocalyptic survival RPG set in an ongoing ice age. The game was developed by Inner Void and originated on crowdfunding site Indiegogo. Now the game starts with your character travelling with a nomad group. Your character has been with this group for 2 years after they saved you from an avalanche, in which you basically obtained amnesia. Yes, it is a little bit cliche from the start. Now before getting into the actual game, you have the character creation, which spans a couple of nicely drawn portraits, and of course the cornerstone of any RPG, the statistics. Characters have both stats and skills, and the stats will affect the skills in their roles. There's a number of skills to choose from, and in character creation, specialising in a couple of skills is often best, rather than going from a limited, broader approach. You can choose either a male or female character and select a few well-drawn portraits, but other than that, there's really little customization to be had. ICY focuses on narratively driven gameplay mixed with resource management and RPG progression. It is primarily a text-based adventure with artwork to add to the visual experience. Indeed, it reminds me of kind of a modernised old school MUD, and there's a lot of text in the game, and it's something that must be read to really get invested into the characters and story, which ultimately is what the game is all about. ICY focuses heavily on choices. Each choice you make will have a consequence and will have some effect in the game, particularly when it comes to the game's ending, as there are multiple endings to experience. ICY, through its choices, deals with different shades of morality. A single event can have several outcomes. An example was coming across a house surrounded by armed nomads who said there was a criminal inside. Then the criminal came out with his dead daughter in his hands, shouting that they had killed his daughter and been keeping their family captive. And then essentially you were given the choice. You could essentially kill him with the armed group, allowing you to gain some equipment from them. You could just leave and back away and let them deal with it by themselves. You could help the man defeat the armed group, which would put your group at risk, but you could possibly gain a new group member. Each event and choice tends to branch into other events and other choices. I like that in conversations, once you've chosen a conversation path to go down, you can't go back and start again. So it does really make you think about the situation and choosing the actual choices that you make very, very carefully. The story itself is fairly well written, if a little cliche at times. There are some really great moments in the game with difficult situations to tackle. Some parts of the writing could have been much better. I certainly cringed every time equipment was described as awesome. At times it felt like it was written by a high school student, which detracted from the actual narrative. The choices that you make in events often reminded me of playing kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons pen and paper. Each event is really well described, and the artwork that's provided to go along with it is always really well drawn and very enjoyable to view. Keeping your group together in itself is also challenging. As you gain more people, each will have their own personalities, and personalities tend to clash. How you deal with the infighting will have consequences, and it will affect the morale of the group, and it can have some dramatic implications for future events. The game does a good job of almost having several stories running at once. You have the main story, and then you will also have characters' personal stories that will often interweave. From a narrative standpoint, ICY does a fairly decent job in providing a fun story to experience. It is sometimes a little rough around the edges and does require a significant investment from the player to read all the dialogue and all the descriptions. But overall, it's a good experience, and there is a good experience to be had from the game. Aside from the text-based gameplay, you also have the overworld map of the White Wasteland. Here you can travel around, manage your inventory, and level up your party. The overworld gameplay is not pretty. The UI design is not terrible, however the map itself and the group indicator on the map is less than pretty. The whole thing looks very rough, and it reminds me of a rough RTS overworld map that just doesn't go well with anything. You can perform a variety of actions on the overworld map, such as travelling, scavenging or hunting. Each action will use up time. Now once nightfall comes, you must either go without a fire or find someplace safe to camp. If you cannot find somewhere safe to camp, every single member of your party will take damage from camping without heat. The main issue with the overworld, apart from its aesthetic, is its buggy state. Moving the screen around the map is tedious, and it works like a touchscreen drag system gone badly. Click where you want to go is not particularly an accurate science, as the marker never quite points to where you actually click the screen, so it's quite unresponsive in that regard. Resource management is also a key part of surviving in the White Wasteland. Your group will need food, ammo and other supplies to trade. Gathering food is done by hunting in forests. Deer provide a good amount of food. All your resources are displayed on the right hand side of the screen on the overworld and will slowly be used up as you travel from place to place. Medicine and food are of the utmost importance as they keep your survivors alive and well. Supplies like medicine will have to be scavenged. Scavenging is similar to hunting but takes place in urban areas or lone buildings. Both hunting and scavenging have 3 options once they've been initiated. The 3 options indicate the time used up. Quick scavenging and hunting runs will use up less time, but they will increase the risk of an enemy or a dangerous event taking place. More prolonged runs will take up more time, but decrease the risk. There are several towns you get to visit in the game that you can trade ammo for equipment. Equipment comes in very handy and not just for fights, but items such as grappling hooks, rope and torches are extremely useful for text-based events, and they will open up new choices that could be the difference between life and death. The inventory system in the game is very disappointing. You cannot individually equip characters with weapons and armor, and everything is instead used direct from the inventory pool. The whole game really lacks customization, and while you can level up your character's skills, the lack of a character sheet and the ability to equip each party member leaves the RPG lover in me feeling unsatisfied. Combat is something you're going to be doing a lot of, and combat essentially works from both the HP and morale system, meaning it is possible to win or lose combat without actually killing anyone or being killed. Gaining the strong upper hand in combat will often have the enemy running for the hills long before their HP goes to 0. While your group does have individual health bars for each character, they tend to actually take damage as a group in battle unless you actually have a specific event in the battle that focuses on a specific companion. When combat does eventually befall you, which it will numerous times, it works similar to a text event. A description of what is actually taking place will be given, such as an enemy running towards you, and then you will be given a choice of how to respond, such as with a melee or bows or guns, etc, etc. The UI will give you information on the enemy's range so that you can make an informed choice about how to respond. It's a fairly average system that doesn't hold any particular standout achievements in tow. It does the job at an average level, it works, but it doesn't really give any satisfying feedback nor any great reward. Now, one thing that I really dislike about the game is that it does have quite a few bugs in its current state. Occasionally situations in text-based events will mismatch, such as a party member falling off a cliff in a 1-story building. The UI can be unresponsive, and there is not a hover mouse system for the inventory, so you actually have to click on something to find out what it is rather than just hover your mouse over it, which is a big no-no for PC gaming in my book. The whole game is clearly designed for a mobile port, and it certainly lacks the cohesion it needs in terms of the UI for a mouse and keyboard. It does function, it is functional, but is it enjoyable? Probably not. I think that the game overall, if you like narratively driven games and you don't mind reading a lot of text, then I certainly can imagine that you would enjoy ICY. However, other than that, if you're on the fence or you're not sure, I would suggest avoiding it, because I can see where people would get very frustrated at a lot of its core design. It's not a bad little indie game by any means, but it's sure got its problems. I feel that a good amount of voice acting in the game would have gone a long way to massively improving the narrative. And like I say, the narrative is for the most part good. There is good characters in there, there's a good story in there, mixed in with bad parts of writing and cliche moments, but overall the narrative was pretty enjoyable. I think the problem is that many people, the game requires an investment from you as a player. It requires you to really read what's going on, to really get involved in the characters, to carefully read the descriptions of environments so that you know what to do when the choice comes around. If you don't like that style of gameplay, if you don't like text-based adventures, if you don't like pen and paper games, then I would certainly say avoid it. But if you do like that kind of thing and you're more interested in playing through the story and experiencing the story rather than the gameplay, then ICY may be right up your street. And that is my review of ICY. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Do like, subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you next time.